Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
We're making a list and checking it twice. It's a special edition of Apple Slice. With WWDC right around the corner next Tuesday morning, in fact, for Australians, we have some things to discuss that we'd like to see at the event. Of course, if you don't know when these live stream times are, you can check out our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube, and I've put together a video for that. So for this WWDC Wishlist edition of Bonus Byte, I've invited a guest that long-time listeners may recognise. So he's a major Apple Slice supporter and a podcast prophet, that's what I call him. For a second time on Apple Slice, we have Ty from the Podcast Post in Melbourne, Victoria. So you excited to be back?
Definitely. Second time on a podcast. So yeah, definitely excited to be back.
And that's a little bit of a two-pointer question because you've just come back from a Vegas trip. Is that right?
I have. So 2 weeks in America, a week in New Orleans or New Orleans as they say it over there, and then a week in Vegas. And I should be nice and refreshed, but I've got the post-holiday blues going straight back into work and the cold weather. So getting there.
Yeah. I've got one to look forward to, doing an American trip in September. So I'm going. My big plan is I have an event to go to in Boston. We're going to detour and go to San Jose and visit Apple Park. So it's going to tick that off my bucket list.
Just a little bit too late for WWDC.
Yes, yeah, but it'll actually happen right before the iPhone event. But unfortunately, I can't get in for that.
No, that's still good to see.
Now, speaking of Apple updates, which obviously this whole episode is about, but just a little side note, did you do the little trick to get the new Pride watch face?
No, I haven't yet. The Apple Watch is probably one of the last things that I update normally, and that's just because I tend to forget about it.
It does take a long time to update.
Oh, okay. Well. Yeah. No, I did see the Instagram post that you had on there with the new watch face. But no, I haven't downloaded it as yet.
Okay. So the idea behind this, if anyone is unaware, it seems that Apple have hidden a new Pride watch face within the latest WatchOS update that will automatically become available, I guess, right after the keynote is finished. But all you have to do to access it now is put your time on your phone ahead, so put it on June 5th, say, and then you'll go to the watch gallery in the watch app and you'll see it there, add it, change your time back to what it's meant to be, and the watch face is still there. So that's a cool little trick that Nick showed me.
A little hack which normally works on games. When you want free features on games, you put the date and the time forward. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I remember doing that back in the Candy Crush days. So. Okay, with no time to spare, let's get into some ground rules for this WWDC wish list. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be a complete free-for-all. We have put some order to it. We're going to basically go through the software categories first and then hardware. Now, I've assigned like a maximum amount that you can say for each category, just so it doesn't go on for too long. And if we double up on any items, what we can do is sort of address the fact that, hey, that was on my list too, and quickly move on to the next point. So points that I think that we shouldn't include, mainly because they're more of a given, is bug fixes, UI consistency, and the usual, I hope they improve Siri. So if you have something that's very specific, like a specific example, feel free to include that. But yeah, let's just say all of those are expected. So you're ready to start?
I am. Let's do it.
Okay, what I want to do is, rather than plunge straight into the big one being iOS, is we're going to start off with the Mac. And there's also some factors I want to point out with iCloud that kind of tie in with the Mac in general. So I'll actually let you start this one off, Ty. So what are you wanting for the next macOS update and from iCloud?
I guess the first thing that I thought of was improvement to the iWork suite, or the old iWork suite. So numbers, pages. I guess day to day I use Microsoft products for all those type of things, and I've never really fully switched over to the Apple software. I'd really like to see some more advancement in that space.
I think stuff like Pages and Microsoft Word, they're pretty on par. The primary difference that people have is that Excel just has so much more going for it. Everything to do with formulas and all this other stuff that you can do, right? So Nick himself uses Excel a lot for that reason, and he said there's pretty much no reason that he should be using numbers. I myself don't use. I know there are some lot of cool features, especially with that recent education event, to do with Pages, but I actually use Keynote a bit as a teleprompter for some video work that I do. So that's pretty cool. I have that, and I have the watch as the control for it between switching slides. So, but hey, I certainly agree. And anything new for iWork would be cool to see.
Yeah, and I definitely have to agree that Keynote is probably one of those products that can compete with PowerPoint. But yeah, definitely Excel is just miles ahead in terms of what you can do with it. Mail on the Mac. I do use Mail on the Mac, and all of my other devices I use the Apple stock Mail app. Often download other apps to try out, and really love some of the features that the other developers come up with, especially being able to snooze or put a timer on emails for when you really want them to come back. I'd just like to see some more Mail features come through. I tend to always go back to the Mail app after most recent updates because all of the other features sort of tie in together. But I do look at other Mail apps and just think add a few more features in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I remember being a hardcore Thunderbird user for years, and then I think there was 1 year where they did quite a bit of update with Mail. I was like, let's just make this legit, give it a go, and I've stuck with Mail since. But yeah, new features definitely.
Mac apps. So there's obviously been a lot of talk lately about potentially having iPad and iPhone apps appear on the Mac or work on the Mac in some way. So I'd really like to see, obviously not a full announcement on that because I don't think that's going to happen, but I would really like to see a hint that might be coming.
I'm really excited about the whole idea of Marzipan being this whole universal app system, and I'm not holding my breath, but this is a wish list, so I'm hoping for a preview at best, because obviously they need to give developers quite a big heads up with this sort of thing. It's a bit more than a heads up about a new iOS feature or something like that. This is like full level in terms of development work, right? So yeah, it's always been floating around the rumor space. It was one of the points on my list, but yeah, some form of this secret Marzipan project preview, I'd definitely be open to that.
Yeah, hopefully they hint at something, or I'd just like to see some movement in that space. Obviously, I think we're a few years away from anything solid, but I think they're working on it. Services, so iCloud Photos, I've never really had any problems with iCloud Photos until I recently traveled, and I only traveled with my iPhone. I didn't take a digital SLR this time. So it was interesting to actually use iCloud Photos and try and take photos on my iPhone and then go back to my iPad later on and make edits. And I thought I could do that on the 15-hour plane ride home. And it turns out that I didn't have the setting on to download all of the photos to my iPad. So when I got on the plane, I realized I couldn't view them in the high resolution that I needed to make the edits. And you can't actually just select a selection of photos to download. It's either all of them or none of them. Well, that's my impression anyway. If someone correct me if I'm wrong out there, but I'd just like more customized options to be able to handle my photos in the cloud, especially after this recent trip.
Yeah, I even noticed little things like, say, if you logged into iCloud.com and you wanted to upload stuff straight in there, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't let you do videos and just little things like that. And yeah, if there was some form of breakdown of what you can actually sync, or, as you said, download, carry over so you can access on your iPad and stuff. Aside from PhotoStream, because I know that PhotoStream is an option like that, like you could add it to your PhotoStream, but yeah, some more detail with stuff like photos with iCloud, but even down to the Files app itself. which I'm sort of jumping ahead to an iOS point here, but I'd like to get more, say, Dropbox-like ability there in terms of file sharing, all that sort of stuff. So I love using iCloud. I love having all my stuff back up and synced between devices, etc. But if they can just expand upon what's there, then that's definitely welcome.
Yeah, and there was also just a little bit of it's probably not a bug. It's the way it's meant to act. But my other half was taking photos as well, and we set up a shared photo album where we could both dump the photos in. And you can't edit photos that the other person has put in there. You actually have to click on the photo, download it, or save it to your photo album, and then go back in there and edit. So it's just little things like that.
Right. Yep.
That again, I've only noticed since going on my recent trip. These things that I've never used before. So yeah, I'd just like to see some improvement to iCloud photos.
You have anything else on for Mac or iCloud?
No, they were the 4 points that I had.
Okay, what I want is I'd like the ability to have a full Mac backup to iCloud. Currently, you can do the sync desktop and documents, but to actually have a full, complete backup of your Mac. So currently, I have it happening wirelessly to my time capsule via Time Machine. But yeah, if it'd be great if they could just not even have to worry about that. I love having it, but if it wasn't there, it's like, well, what are my options for doing Mac backups aside from actually physically connecting an external hard drive, which I don't want to do, right? So that would be great. I would love for them to up the 5 gigs free to 50 gigs. I think that's a massive complaint from a lot of users. I was never that frustrated with it because I'm happy to pay, the $1.50 or whatever it costs me for 50 gig plan. But it is actually becoming more apparent to me that it is a real problem for people, the fact they even have to pay, like the fact that the 5 gigs fills up so quickly. So they're fine going out and spending however much it costs on their device, but they don't want to then pay that little bit to expand their iCloud storage. A lot of general users don't even really understand how cloud storage works anyway. So when you're sort of telling them you have to pay for something that they don't really can't really wrap their head around it, they're like, well, why do I need that for?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've paid for iCloud storage since it started, really. So I've never really thought about it until setting up my parents' devices and trying to back it up and move it over to new devices and finding out they just didn't have enough space for their photos. It fills up very quickly. I
think a good way to, say, reward people that have multiple Apple products is accumulative storage. Mm-hmm. So the more products you have, the more you get in terms of what's free. That could be a cool idea. They are actually offering free trials for 1 month trials for actually upgrading your storage at the moment. I think, which is an interesting concept. I'm not sure how many people even know about it, but maybe that's hinting at something to come, but I'm not sure. As I touched on, the ability to have public file sharing and folders for iCloud. So I'm talking primarily about the Files app here. And okay, so in iOS 11.4, which just came out, they launched Messages in iCloud. Awesome. Yes. Currently not available for the Watch or iCloud.com, which one of my primary gripes was the fact that there is no real syncing between messages on your Watch and your iPhone. Like, you receive them, but you delete it off your watch, it doesn't delete off the phone, and vice versa. I would love that to be synced. That's a big one for me. I think only in the sense that when I do look at a message on my watch, I then can scroll back, because I'm one that deletes messages a lot, right? I like to keep it clean. I know a lot of people like full history, but I like to keep mine clean. And I'm just sort of scrolling through on the watch, and I have to delete the conversation one by one, and it's like 2 taps per deletion. And yeah, so syncing there would be great. I am a big fan of MacBook Pro Touch Bar. I know a lot of people in tech media like to say Touch Bar was just some sort of goofy add-on, or it was a failure. Yes, it didn't take off quite as well as I'd hoped. I still use it all the time. I love the integration from third-party apps and such as Adobe apps that I've mentioned before, and of course all the Apple's use with it. I'm not entirely sure as to the future of it, but if they could at least breathe a bit more life or bring a bit more focus back to it, and maybe have some demos, or hey, we've expanded this for Touch Bar, that would be awesome. A revamped iTunes and or Mac App Store. I'd love a Mac App Store revamp to align with the iOS App Store. That would certainly make it feel fresher. And yeah, iTunes is one of those take it or leave it things. I barely use it nowadays. I know more people complain about it than actually enjoy it. It seems to me that it's going to become quite obvious for them to have like Apple Music as a dedicated sort of app rather than under the iTunes label. So in a few episodes back, I discussed with Lance about that macOS concept that was created by Alvaro Pabizio, and that covered that sort of thing, splitting iTunes away from Apple Music, having their own brand new design and that sort of thing. So if they did anything to refresh that would be amazing. And yeah, aside from that in the Marzipan preview, that's Mac and iCloud for me. Okay, so iOS, the big one. I'll get into this one first, so I'll take the lead for this one. I would love for 4.7-inch screens and up to have split screen. In terms of features available on Android that aren't available on iOS, that's quite a major one. Since having iPhone 10, switching between apps is super easy, but I just love it to be an option. As I said, 4.7-inch screen and upwards, so that way, it wouldn't really work on the 4-inch screen phones. That'd be cool. Having the idea of Siri in group messages. This was covered in a patent a fair while ago, but having like Siri suggestions and stuff in terms of when you're doing group message, trying to organize a dinner or some sort of group meeting, in terms of finding out who's reading different people's calendars, seeing who's available, that sort of thing. That'd be cool. A big one, which I don't know how much of an issue it is for you, is group notifications. So bring group notifications back, essentially, because it was available for a short while there. I think it was iOS 6 or something. It's only become an issue more recently because I've started enabling notifications for more apps, and I wake up in the morning and suddenly I've got like at least 2 screens worth to scroll through, and usually I just sort of clear them and go straight to the app, right? But some grouping there would be good. How's that been for you?
I think that's definitely something that needs to be improved, notifications in general, but the grouping of them, especially running the podcast post on Instagram. I wake up in the morning and there's just scrolling through, and I've had to turn off what notifications I get from that. But yeah, grouping them would be, I think it's an easy fix. Coming from a non-developer or a coder here, but I just think that's something that would make a lot of people very happy.
Well, they've done it before. Yeah. So Lance, when he appeared recently, had the idea of being able to prioritize your apps within the notifications. If they took it that far, that'd be really great. So then your most important ones will be sitting towards the top, and it's not, you could have it all chronological, or you could have it by what app you deem the most important. Group FaceTime calls. Anytime I've done a podcast or anything involving more than one-on-one, we've had to use Skype. Group FaceTime calls just seem so obvious. I don't know why it's not there already. So, yeah, that seems like a obvious one for me. The big one, probably the most requested feature, and I'm feeling quite likely, is dark mode. Now, this is primarily for me in the sense that I'm not chasing to have a dark mode constantly. What I'm chasing is to have what they currently have for Apple TV, where it's based on your timing or sunset, sunrise, right? So I've got the crisp white light interface during the day, and then it goes to the darker muted one at nighttime for nighttime viewing. I've had the WWDC artwork as my lock screen wallpaper since they released it. And yeah, anytime I have to go check my phone in the middle of the night, I just get blasted with white. Obviously, that's a choice for the wallpaper, right? But I think it'd be cool to, just even the UI itself. So from there, that's my wallpaper, but I go into any app, Facebook or whatever, and that's predominantly white, right? So yeah, a dark mode would be good.
Yeah, I use dark mode on a few apps. Any app that offers it, really, I would use it. So anything they can do with their own apps and the overall OS, I think would be great.
I think the way it was pulled off in that iOS 12 concept that I covered not too long ago, that seems like a very good way to go from the visual side of it. So Speaking of which, in that
Yeah.
concept, there was actually the idea of minimized controls. So by this, I mean a minimized Siri and minimized volume indicator. That the volume indicator especially, it is minimized in some views, like when you're watching videos and such, but not like OS wide. So that would be great. You can just contain it in one of the top corners.
Yeah.
And minimize Siri would be good. At least give the option, I think, that it would be minimized by default, and then you could open it up to full screen if you want, or you could just turn that feature off and have full screen Siri, whatever. But yeah, if you're able to do Siri commands and actually still see what you're working on, what you're doing on your phone, on your device, that'd be cool. A horizontal Face ID. This is leaning towards my big hope for a iPad Pro with Face ID, but yeah, I mentioned recently that I've been using the Osmo 2 gimbal, and anytime I need to set up my phone in landscape orientation, and I have to like turn my head full 90 degrees to unlock the phone. Yeah, it would be a good one. I can understand why they probably didn't do it off the bat, because Face ID was new. They didn't want any way for you turning your head or anything to somehow affect the results of it or the accuracy of it. But I think that now they've had Face ID for this long, and they obviously, I'm guessing, would be working on improvements, at least from the software side of things. They'd be able to then expand it to be able to work in both portrait and landscape.
Even just waking up in the morning and lying down trying to unlock your phone when it's on the stand, that would be a great help.
Your iPhone 10 user, obviously, as well. That's my only gripe I've had with it, is the whole lying down thing, and that for me is primarily because it's like the whole you got a bit of pillow covering your face sort of thing, and I have to reveal my full face to do it. But how's it actually been for you, like with that and overall?
Face ID works pretty much every time, except for those cases like you mentioned, lying down or using it in portrait. But I guess I have an office job. My phone's sitting flat on the desk all the time, and just having to lean over that phone ever so slightly just to unlock it, compared to using Touch ID, that's where I've really noticed it most. But in terms of using keychain and unlocking the phone when I'm holding it in my hand, it's worked surprisingly well for a new feature.
Yeah, I'm definitely a big fan. Okay. The iPhone control center. This is currently on iPhone 10 situated in the top right. Mm-hmm. I've actually grown accustomed to it being there. It's the fact that it's not there in that position on other devices running iOS. That's the real problem. If I go to use iPad or something like that, I'm swiping in the wrong area. It would be great if they could reposition it with the swipe up in terms of, say, within the app switcher. This was covered in iOS 12 Concept 2. It seems like a logical place to do it. People have been saying, okay, well, if they did, it could be contained. So you invoke app switcher on your phone, and then either the control center begins at the bottom of the screen there, or it's towards the right. So currently on iPad, when you go app switcher, the control center is at the right. So maybe that sort of seems logical. But that would be good, because it still feels like a bit of an afterthought being in the top right corner. Again, I'm used to it. I use it so much, particularly with the children demanding shows on Apple TV. The Apple TV remote built into Control Center is my most used thing on my phone. Seriously.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Wow, I use it so much, yeah. And also within Control Center, the ability to customize the controls in the way that you can do it currently, but you have to do it within settings. I'd love it to be draggable. That'd be cool rather than having to dig through settings. But just on that note, what's been your experience with Control Center being situated where it is?
So Control Center was actually on my list as well.
Okay.
So firstly, in regards to where it is across the devices. So I'm not too fussed with it being where it is on the 10, but I use an iPad Pro, and I also use an iPhone 6 as my work phone. And going across those devices, it is definitely frustrating trying to locate where the control center is on each device, because it's all different. And
because your muscle memory would have been used to, one gesture over the other, and it becomes confusing.
I think it's just a a result of them releasing the 10 and it needing to be there just because of Face ID and no Touch ID there. Look, I think they will correct it. I think it's something we're going to see in the next iOS release across all the devices. I think there will be some improvement there. But in terms of Control Center, again, going back to my recent trip, obviously I don't have a cellular connection because I don't want to pay a fortune when I get back home. So I'm trying to access Wi-Fi points wherever I go. And you have to go into the settings every time to try and find. And I just think it'd be so much easier if I could just go into Control Center and just find my closest Wi-Fi and just tap on it rather than having to go into the settings. So that's been, the most recent thing that I've come across in regards to Control Center. I
build it in with like a 3D touch or something.
Yeah, I think it's, or if at least takes you back to the settings where you need to be, then I'd be happy with that. But I agree that we should be able to customize that Control Center more than we currently have. They are getting there slowly, but
yeah, I mean, I like the design of it. It's just as we've outlined, we've got this problem of where it's currently situated versus other iOS devices. And then, of course, little things like just having to have any situation when you have to manually go to the settings where it could actually be possible from whatever you're using, such as the example of, the camera settings not being in the camera app. Yeah, they seem like obvious wins where they could just make some changes, but... okay, I also had better use of the iPad Pro screen real estate. So hanging out for new iPad Pros, the one I did have, which I sold, the 10.5 inch, that's fine. There were a few apps that had been scaled up from 9.7, but not too much of a big deal. But I feel sorry for the people with the 12.9s because I would love a 12.9 inch iPad Pro, but there's just so many examples of apps that are just not making use, even Apple's stock apps, they're not making use of all that screen real estate. So kind of like, to me, it's going to, whatever they announce here, if they have some stuff that's showing making better use of screen real estate, then I'd be more likely to go in terms of a purchase for a 12.9 inch. But if not, then I'd probably have to settle for the 10.5. But it's just been one of those things that some people have pointed out that they used to make pretty good use of it when iPad was newer. It was almost like putting a bit more focus into it because of the excitement around it. And then I guess in the way that iPad itself hasn't stagnated, but they weren't exactly releasing iPad specific features for a fair while until last year, right? So, which was really exciting at the time. So I think they should just, while that ball is rolling, while iPad Pros and just a general iPad refocus has been going on, they should definitely dedicate a section of the keynote to that. And then my last point is to improve the portrait lighting, the front-facing portrait lighting. So portrait mode on that on your rear camera has been great. I've been always impressed with the results. But I think the front-facing one, particularly when they were showing the stage light and stage light mono features, like as a real big part of last year's WWDC, and when it actually came out and I actually got the iPhone 10 and I used it, I was quite disappointed with the results. It took me a long time to get a picture that didn't look like a crappy Photoshop cutout. So I don't know if you've used that much, but I use all other aspects of it, have actually been pretty all right. It's just I wanted to do the cool stage light thing, wanted to do the thing that they showed at the keynote, and other people have had decent results with it, but it seems to be more of like a beta thing, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I don't know if you've tried it.
I've tried using it on some of the photos that I've taken, and when portrait mode was released, straight out of the bag, even though it was in beta, it worked really well. But these new features in the photo app, I have used them, but I've never actually saved a photo that I've taken or posted it anywhere.
The front-facing ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. That wraps up iOS. This moves us on to HomePod. So I want to cover a few things in this, but you yourself are a multi-HomePod owner?
No, I only got the one. I was holding out for the release of the stereo, which did drop this week.
Just happened.
Yeah, and was on my list, so they've Sherlocked me there. But Yeah, only one.
Okay. And do you have anything you'd like that's HomePod specific for software?
So obviously it was the stereo. So that's good that that's come out. Podcasts. So it does work well when playing podcasts, and I can ask it to play different podcasts that I like. I don't know if it's just me or if I'm asking it to do the wrong thing, but I would like to be able to ask it to play a specific podcast episode, not just the title of a podcast, like Apple Slice episode 10 or, for example. But every time I give it a name, it either plays the most recent or it plays it in the order that's in my iPhone settings. And if I haven't updated those iPhone settings, it won't play it in order. So I don't know if I've got to do a little bit of tweaking there, but I'm finding it difficult to get the podcast playing that I actually want to listen to.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. I can't get episode specific, and the podcast syncing. Like I know you and I have essentially switched over to Breaker recently, but prior to that we were using Apple Podcasts app, right? And I just can't get it to continue from the point I was at. It just plays from the start, most recent episode. So the podcast syncing definitely, I think, is a major one because, you're within your own home. I do a lot of podcast listening at home, and it just seems like such an obvious thing. I thought that it was going to pick up from the point that I had stopped listening at, especially when they were specifically mentioned podcasts at the HomePod presentation. But yeah, the fact that it just doesn't work, it seems like an obvious one. Yeah,
and I just find myself airplaying my podcast, and I've just given up asking it to do it. So music works really well. It's just the podcast, unfortunately.
Anything else for HomePod?
So I know at the start you said not to mention Siri, but I think it's a big one for HomePod. I think Siri getting better needs to happen. Although it wasn't marketed to be a competitor to Google and Amazon, I think it needs to happen to be successful. So I think we'll see it. I think we'll see definitely some improvements there.
I think they'll realise that they were initially pitched it as being a premium audio experience, which it is, and then we found out also that they're working on all this time, and the Siri team were only privy to it in the last year or two of its development. And so I think that now they're really feeling the fact that in the areas that Siri does fall short on the HomePod, that's actually really affecting the how people feel about HomePod in general. So I think they're realizing that they sort of just can't get away with pitching it as audio only. Again, for the useful audio that I've had with it, as in my review, it's been great. Aside from the Macarena Mark Farina debacle, but it's definitely becoming evident to me that, and I do feel like Siri is going to be a big part of WWDC. That's why I sort of wasn't just wanting to say, oh, hey, Siri improvements in general, but considering that that is HomePod's way of controlling it, it's the only way to go, really. It's the only way for them to move forward with the longevity for the device.
And for a first release of a product, I still think it's amazing. The sound's amazing. Definitely going to get another one for other parts of the house. So I didn't really have too many more improvements for that. I mean, improving Siri is probably the only thing that I'd like to see at this stage with the HomePod, for me anyway.
I would love multiple voices and multiple users. So like a voice ID, essentially. So we know that Siri on the phone can detect whether it's you versus like someone else can't trigger your phone, right? But in the home, it's obviously anyone can trigger it with the key phrase. But that's about it. So it's only tied to whatever account that the HomePod is activated with. I'd love for people with their own phone for it to be able to use HomePod and then it'll recognize their voice and they want to add stuff to their notes or whatever, and it does it on their device. So currently if anyone else in my house decided to add stuff to notes, it's going to go on my phone only. This multiple user thing is part of Google Home and such, so that's being one of my biggest gripes in the sense of just something that I really want to happen. Nick and I have been talking about multi-user for a long time, particularly with Apple TV, which is actually one of my points jumping ahead to that. But being able to differentiate the multiple voices would be awesome. I'd love for them to expand SiriKit to more categories like podcast apps. So like on my episode with Eric from Breaker, he was saying he would love for people to be able to play Breaker episodes with the HomePod. He doesn't mind them specifying playing it on Breaker. He didn't exactly say being able to set Breaker as the default app, but to actually tell it to do that, which you currently can. You can currently do things with Siri and specify an app, but currently podcast is not one of those SiriKit categories. So add that, that'd be great. Overall, the way HomePod handles audio is great. Over the months that I've had it, particularly with more the type of music I listen to, I know I initially said I don't think EQ settings is a must, but I think it would be a nice to have. So I'd love for them to add some audio EQ in that. Where it is within the Home app, I like that to be a bit more obvious as well, how to actually... Because, when I wanted to check to make sure the software update had happened on HomePod, I'd completely forgotten how to do it. And you got to go through you got to go edit, and you got to go to the actual home, and then it's all kind of buried in an unintuitive way. So that would be cool. And I'd also like to make HomePod itself more customizable, so you could actually change like the tones and stuff that it emits. I would actually really love a default volume. Like you could set a default volume that it puts itself to based on, say, a certain amount of time of inactivity. So if I've been listening to music at 90% volume and then I don't do anything for 2 hours, and then when I ask it a command, it's really loud.
Yeah.
I'd love for it to always default back to, say, 30% or something like that, something that's not going to, if I've got people around and I'm using it and suddenly this thing yells across the room, makes them jump out of their chair, I think that'd be a cool feature. Yeah. But that's HomePod for me.
Great.
Okay, tvOS, multi-user, as I said. The TV, as well as HomePod, would be definitely one of the most shared devices in the home. We've been wanting it since the start of Apple size, really. So if they're going to do multi-use on HomePod, surely they can do multi-use on tvOS. I would love a solid Apple TV and HomePod integration to be able to play stuff on my use the HomePod as my Siri remote, but even more than you currently can. So actually specify it to play X show in Netflix, stuff like that. That would be really cool, particularly if people are using the HomePods as their TV speakers as well. That'd be good. And I think make the TV app itself more compelling. I find myself only going into it because I know some of my kids' recent shows are on there. I'm not going in it to discover new stuff or see what's playing. It's kind of like, well, I know what's coming on Netflix. I know I know the shows I want to catch up on ABC iView and that sort of it. So, because I like the way it's laid out enough. When I go in there, I find I've kind of shown more of hey, here's the latest commercial TV show of whatever, and you do find some stuff in there, but I don't know, do something to make it more of what the center of Apple TV should be. Because I've turned off the having the TV button on the remote going to the TV app. Like I set it to go back to the main screen. So
yeah, I've set it up and it didn't really do anything for me. I still found myself going back to Netflix to discover new shows or pick up where I left off. I think the other apps still do it better. There was nothing keeping me to the Apple TV app.
I mean, I love being able to search a show anywhere just using the Siri remote or using the Apple TV app. Mm-hmm. Actually, dictating to it what you want to search and then being able to have the option to open in whatever app from there. I use that all the time. That's generally pretty good. But yeah, the TV app itself, it's just sort of sitting there, and I have it there up in the main section, but yeah, I'm not using it for what it's meant to be used for. Now, I know you said that Watch is kind of like one of the last things that you update, but do you have anything Watch specific you'd like to see?
Obvious one, more podcast support for for Apple Watch. I know a few of the apps do it now, but even if people don't use the stock podcast app on their phone, I still think that Apple should put a little bit more effort into supporting that on the watch, especially with the cellular watch. I think,
definitely.
people going to the gym and things like that, it's just something that's missing. And again, it should be an easy thing to do.
Yeah, it should literally just be like the way that they handle the music app. Do that for podcasts.
And if developers can do it, then there's no reason why Apple can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, the podcast apps on the watch in terms of third party, they are like a workaround because the actual watch kit itself is quite limited for developers.
Yeah, and I think you still need the phone as well.
Okay, so I reviewed Outcast, and that's the closest to a with that app, I can actually search and play podcast over the cellular connection on the watch only.
Okay, yeah.
It's more the, if I want to download to it, it basically downloads really slowly. You have to put your phone in airplane mode to essentially make your watch independent. Then you download it to the watch, and it's a lot faster. So when it goes via the phone, it's really slow at downloading, and the screen has to be on for it to do it, and all things like that. So a native podcast support, and then I'm not expecting him to open that part up too much to developers, but if that then leads on to, say, having a Breaker podcast watch app, that'd be sweet.
Yeah, so either or. I mean, they could release their own app for the watch as a start, or if they're not that interested in it, just open up the developer kit a little bit more and just let developers do it.
Which is one of my points, just improving the watch kit for developers. Yeah.
I also had sleep tracking. So there are apps out there that you can use as part of sleep tracking with your phone and your watch. I've only got the first Apple Watch, and it would not work on mine. I don't think the battery life's there for that, but I think it'd be interesting as part of their ongoing focus on health to have sleep tracking as part of the watch. And an always-on screen. They're at a point where you could probably have some watch faces that don't dim when you put your hand down, or show limited notifications without having to flick your wrist trying to get it to turn on. I know it is quite fast now, but I think an always-on screen would be interesting.
Yeah, that was covered in the we were talking about the third-party watch faces idea in a recent episode with Nick, and that was one of the things. Which then would tie in with actually another point I wanted to mention about iOS, which is some form of always-on features for the iPhone. So if they did it for the iPhone, they can do it for the watch at the same time.
It would probably only come out with the iPhone 10, wouldn't it? Is that what you're thinking? Yeah, with the OLED, yeah.
Because of OLED, yeah. Yep. Okay, so anything else for you for watch? Okay. I had, podcast app, as you said. I want to be able to customize the control center. Oh, yeah. So the control center currently has sort of like more and more options being added to it. I don't mind scrolling down for the options, but it's the fact that some of the options are lower down that I want to access. So I actually use cinema mode every time I go to the movies. Go to movies relatively often, but I am actually at risk at accidentally pinging my iPhone while trying to scroll down to access cinema mode. So if I can, at least from the watch app, just toggle the order of it, that'd be cool. I want to see live Siri waveforms. They used to have that, but now if you invoke Siri on the watch, you get like a Siri animation and it kind of looks a bit slow and jittery and it's not respondent to your voice like it is on every other device. So bring that back, because it would actually make the watch feel like that it's... Because when you see it, it just feels like that it's not... Siri's not responding. It actually is. It's just playing an animation that's not live. As I said, improved watch kit for developers and the searching in the music app. So I don't know what your experience has been for this, but okay, I go out and I've got the cellular connection, I've got the AirPods in, and unless I'm doing something drastically wrong, I can only search with my voice. And I can't sort of even try, like, see it with a dictation. It's like it's purely Siri controlled. And I've actually had a lot of trouble trying to play certain albums.
Yeah, I can't say that I've actually tried searching for it. Obviously, I don't have a cellular one, so I use my phone for the controls generally. That's interesting.
Yeah, okay. So for me, okay, the example I give is I went out for my exercise, watch only. This is like the first time I had Celia. I was like, yeah, cool, great. Yep, things are working. I was like, oh, let's just stream some music. Went to that and I was like, play Imago by The Butterfly Effect, which is the name of an album. Now, it can be pronounced Imago, like a few different ways, and I could not get it to do it at all. And on my 12th attempt, I ended up spelling the word out, and it worked. And then I went to go do it again the next day, and I spelt the word out, and it didn't work. And I was just like, at least if they had a search where I could use Scribble to write it, or just have the features like you have with messaging on the watch, where you can scribble, you can dictate, or you can use Siri. Some way that makes it seem a bit more obvious as to how you can access music. Because for other things it worked great. I was like, play the latest album by Lamb of God, and that worked perfectly. But when it was a hard to pronounce artist or album, that's where the Siri part let me down, unfortunately.
Yeah, they were quick to release a watch where you don't need your phone, but maybe not enough effort's been put into actually thinking about how you control it without the phone.
Okay, so that wraps up the software. And last WWDC, we got a fair bit in the hardware space, which I was really excited by, considering before that it wasn't, you might see the odd bit of hardware, but they really dominated it last year. And so they've kind of set up the expectation that this is kind of going to happen each year, right? So what would you like to see, considering this is a pro/developer event?
Yeah, I think I did hear that the shipping of the MacBook Pro without Touch Bar has been pushed out to June. I think I read that somewhere. I think it was
That's
Mac
right.
Observer.
Yep.
Which sort of indicates to me that something's happening, that something will get released, which is good news. And I think a MacBook Pro is an obvious choice. You've got a whole room of developers that all probably have MacBook Pros and want the latest and greatest. I don't think it'll be a full redesign, but I think we might see an update of some kind. And although I don't have one, I have used one of the ones with the butterfly switches. I'm a pretty good typer, I'd like to think, but I do find that I make a lot of mistakes using that keyboard. So we might see...
There's a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah, we might see maybe, the third version maybe, I don't know. I think it might be a possibility.
I've got that on my list right here. Because there's not many options to discuss on this, we can kind of go back and forth. But yeah, MacBook Pro, I'm expecting it to be there, or hoping to be there on the wish list with spec bump, a version 3 for butterfly keys. So because the whole keys getting stuck thing, that's flaring up in the news lately.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I've had a couple of keys get stuck. I've managed to fix them by prying them open and just like blowing behind it. But some people have properly stuck keys. The actual feel of the butterfly itself, keys itself, because I've got the version 2. I don't have a problem with it. I'm not making at the start. I was making mistakes with the typing, but it only took like a day or two, and then I was into it.
Yeah.
I do appreciate that people really fell in love with, say, the style of keyboard on the MacBook Air. So I think with version 3, improve it in some way with, some form of the way they do the seal around the keys to prevent crumbs and stuff getting in, which is causing stuck keys, as well as maybe increase the travel on it for it to be kind of like a compromise between the butterfly that we currently have and the keyboard style before. That way people might accept it a bit more and might be able to reduce a bit of the clacky sound of it as well. So that's what I'm feeling, and I would hope, I'm not expecting redesign overall, but it'd be cool if they could reduce the bezel even further, like a uniform micro bezel or something. That'd be great. And yeah, along with the idea of the non-touch bar ones being pushed out, I'm expecting them to release a non-touch bar version in 15-inch. Because given that touch bar hasn't taken off as much as it should, and developers are like, well, what if I want the 15-inch one, but I don't want to pay extra for the touch bar? Well, they should provide that option. What else did you have?
So I was thinking if they were going to update, and it might not have leaked, possibly Face ID somewhere on the Mac. I think that'd be interesting. I don't think we'll see it, but I think that'll be a cool thing to have. Even on an iPad, although I don't think we're going to see iPads just yet.
Everyone's killing my dream. Like Nick's like, no, be realistic. Not coming out until later in the year, if that.
No. I think the education event sort of took that away. I think they will just leave that one there and then announce some pros later on. You never know.
So just so I have something to hold on to, could you be open to agreeing to redesign iPad Pro at the September event?
What, iPhone event?
Yeah, including it there instead. Given that the iPhone event doesn't have the big launch of the whole new design, because they've done that with iPhone 10. Like, this is like the talk of the TikTok cycle.
Yeah, possibly. Or if not before.
Okay.
In some way. So whether another event, or at the iPhone event, I definitely think we'll see something this year. I think the iPads and the iPad Pros especially, and the software that they're putting out for iPads is it's won over a lot of people, and I think they're just going to keep on going with it.
Do you have anything else in the hardware space?
Just not much you can do with an Apple Pencil, but I'd like to see if they do anything else with that.
Eraser tip, that's what I'm wanting.
Yeah, anything. I think again, as a first go at a product, I think, you know, along with the HomePod and the AirPods and the Pencil, I think they're really great products. So yeah, maybe just a bit of an update to the Pencil.
Okay, no surprise that on my list is none other than the redesigned iPad Pro. I'm not going to rattle off my desired specs for it again because I've said it that many times, but hey, I'm holding on to that. MacBook Pros we discussed. 13-inch Retina MacBook, so something to actually replace the MacBook Air, which is still just sitting there on shelves, still selling, still at the same price. So yes, a 13-inch version of the Retina MacBook. I want them to do a good upgrade on the internals because it's the type of chip used and the lack of grunts that it has, even though, you know, its design as this highly portable device, not exactly for, you know, high-end programs and stuff. If they could actually put something in there that helps justify the expense as well, because the design is a big part of it. But so take the same design as the 12-inch MacBook, but obviously just make it the 13-inch size, so be larger, and also have what I just described as the version 3 of the butterfly keys. So have that on there, good internals upgrade, and then just let the MacBook Air go.
Yeah, eventually. It's got to go eventually, one day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not expecting them to add any more ports than the one port on there, but if they did add a second USB-C, just so you could at least connect something and charge at the same time if you want, that'd be cool. But that brings us to the end of the WWDC Wishlist. It's only... Actually, if I check the timer now, we're just 4 days and a few hours away of it, actually.
4 days.
Yeah. Are you staying up for the live stream?
No, it's at 3:00 here. So if anything, I'll be getting up early. Yeah, or I might watch the recording. Last year I got up, but we'll see. I'm not too sure. I'm still a little bit jet lagged, so who knows?
For myself, I actually booked the day off for it because I know that now that I've actually started getting up for the live streams, there's no way I can't do it, and it's 1 a.m. for me, which just that's not a good time for me. I'm not once I'm awake, I don't get back to sleep easily at all, particularly when I'm thinking about all these announcements. So, yeah. I'm getting up for it. It's a bit of a rough deal for Australians, but as I point out in the video, I think Australians are the most dedicated Apple fans. So
that's right. We've got to go through a lot.
Yeah. All right. Awesome having you on the episode finally after it was back in September that you first appeared. So great having you back. And just because I only briefly mentioned what your online presence is about, can you just give us a little bit of rundown of what's happening with the podcast post?
So the last time we spoke, I just sort of started the Instagram account, the podcast post, where we highlighted podcasts that I was listening to and hoping to share that with other listeners. Since then, we've gotten up to nearly 4,000 followers.
Yeah, that's good.
And another 1,000 across Twitter and Facebook combined. So what I found is that there is a lot more podcasters out there that are interested as well in what's happening in the industry. So as I go forward, it'll be focused on new podcasts plus maybe podcast news. So it's still a work in progress. So it's evolving as time goes on, but it's great to see the listeners and creators of these podcasts come together and comment and chat and really create a community around it, which has been great.
Cool. I'll definitely leave links to all the channels and the website too. Do you have the email newsletter up and running yet, or is that soon to come?
It's still a work in progress. So you can definitely subscribe and leave your email address on the website.
Yep.
But no mail outs yet. So I'm not spamming anybody yet.
Also, if there are any other podcasters listening, I've done this for Apple Slice, but if you are interested in joining in and having your podcast shown to the Podcast Post followers, Podcast Post is actually available on Patreon. So if you become a patron of that, then Ty will feature you on Instagram and such. So he's already got a couple on board. So I think it'd be good to see more podcasts joining on as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks having you on for this wishlist conversation, particularly having just come fresh after a trip. Your time zones must be a bit whack. But it's been good having a chat. And I guess we'll have a lot to talk about sometime in the future, see how the Podcast Post is going. But yeah, really the next thing happening from now is what actually appears at WWDC. So we'll see how well we scored in terms of what we've been discussing.
Yeah, I'll keep my list and I'll tick it off and we'll see who wins.
Awesome. No worries. I'll catch you later.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.